Hey Tony, how you doing? This is Chris or Fix from Cordy. I'm gonna kind of go ahead and jump right into this. I've released the string tension from the strings and just slid them off the nut to the side. I like to put a piece of paper down just to make sure nothing gets scratched when I do this. They probably won't anyway, but just for precautionary sake. Excuse me. So our first step is going to be to take our file. Now let's go over the files real quick. I sent you a 12, and I believe your string gauge that you got in for the elixirs is a 12. I sent you a 17 for the B string. Your string gauge will be a 16. I sent you a 28 for the G string, and your string gauge is going to be a 24. I sent you a 34 for the D string, and the strings are a 32. I sent you a 40 for the A string. The string is a 42, and I sent you a 52 for the E string nut slot, and the string gauge is a 53. Okay, don't worry about the slot variations there. I'll cover all that in a minute, how to compensate for the slot differences. Our first step that we have is we're going to take the appropriate file for the string, and we're just going to set that into the nut slot for that string. And we want to bridge the first fret and let it sit on the second fret. Make sure you don't go too far back and allow it to hit the fretboard itself. Just want it set on the second fret, bridge the first fret. Now this nut's already been slotted and set, so you can't really see it. But usually when one's not set very well, you'll see a gap here at the first fret. And what you're going to want to do is adjust that gap. And what we're shooting for is a barely visible gap at the first fret. We want just enough so if we put down a piece of paper, it catches it snug, but you can still move it. And it's just enough to keep it from falling out, really. Okay. So we want to gradually file the nut slot down. Whenever we file, we want to file at a slight angle to assure that the string releases at the very end of the nut slot. If it releases at the front, say you try to file straight down, you end up with a string buzz here at the nut. So we want to go at a little bit of an angle to assure that it releases at the back. And we also want to make sure that we keep it parallel. You can kind of use the side of the fretboard as a reference to make sure you're keeping this slot straight. And just gentle pulls with light pressure. Okay, do 2 or 3 light pulls. You can kind of get the idea as you're doing it. But keep checking often, very often. It's kind of hard to add material back to the nut. It can be done, but it's a step you really don't want to go to. So just keep an eye on it and move it down, and just keep checking it with a thin piece of just regular notebook paper. You don't want to use anything like a real thick computer paper, just a regular sheet of notebook paper where it's good. You want just enough to where it grabs it. So just keep checking and filing until you get it to that point. Now once you get it filed down to where it needs to be, we're going to kind of smooth out the nut slot. And to do that, you just use the back of the file. Just flip it over to the smooth side. And you just want to, at the same angle, just kind of buff it. Okay. And that'll really smoothen it out. And make sure there's no snags to catch a string. Now, for the nut slots, or the string slots, with the files that I sent that were slightly too small, say like on the A string where I sent you a 40 for 42, all you do is just slightly tilt it as you file and just work it out just a little bit. Okay, not much, it just needs a touch, but you do want the nut slot to be just a touch bit bigger than the string because you don't want any bindage. That's the reason some of them I sent you are a little bit bigger. Say we're the 28 or the 24, that's going to be about perfect. So you want to try to keep that one as straight as possible. but the others you can give just a little bit of play in. I think you get the idea. You seem to be pretty confident for sure. So anyway, that's pretty much it. Just keep going through each one and checking them as you go, and that'll do it. This is the main reason that we actually straighten up the neck. If we have any relief, most of our curve would be between the 7th fret and the nut. And if you have any relief or curve in the neck, whenever you go to set your nut, you get a false reading and you can't get it set properly. So that's our main reason. A lot of guitars can't really be set up with zero relief because the fretboard has to be perfectly straight. There can be no hump, and a lot of times there's a hump where the fretboard passes over the body. But anyway, they have to be almost perfect. So a lot of inexpensive guitars can't be set up with zero relief. But that's not a problem. We just add a little bit more relief up here once we get everything set, and we make all our adjustments at the nut. At the saddle. The saddle is pretty much where you set all your heights. So that'll pretty much cover it. I'm going to do the saddle video here in just a minute. I don't have one pulled out right now. So I hope that helped. I believe I covered pretty much everything. It's a pretty simple procedure. So if you have any questions, be sure to drop me an email. One thing I did forget. After you've buffed them and have them all filed and checked, your finishing touch is a little bit of graphite and a pencil. A good sharp pencil works fine. And this will lube the slot and make sure there's no binding. And it helps prevent any string breakage, keeps you in tune real well, and just allows the string to move through the slot very easily. But just take a nice sharp pencil and just color it inside the slot a little bit, and that'll give you a little bit of graphite. Okay, and then put your strings back on and give it a test go. Once you get them back on, you can measure your action at the 12th fret again, and from there we'll start sanding on the saddle, and I'll have that bit up in a minute. Okay, hope helped, man. Peace.